Hi, I'm Dr. Neil Cox from the University of Reading, and this is the first in a series of free talks about Seamus Heaney's Out of the Bag. And I'm often asked to talk about the Forward Poetry Collection when I kind of visit schools as part of the university's outreach programme. And I always really enjoy talking about Out of the Bag because it's fantastic, basically. It's also one of the longer poems in the Forward collection, and it's a pretty demanding poem. There's no two ways about that. I know students sometimes find it quite testing. In the poem, it kind of starts with the narrator talking about his home life when he was a kid, and about a doctor that used to come every time he was going to get a new brother and sister, and the kind of fantasy that the narrator had, that somehow the new brother or sister came from the doctor's bag, that the doctor had this strange kind of setup behind the door of his mother's room, and he would kind of stitch together body parts and somehow produce these kind of children. And then it kind of cuts to the narrator thinking about being ill and visiting sites of healing, as were in ancient Greece, and visiting religious sites in France as well. And then it ends with a sequence in which the narrator is standing in his mother's room, seemingly waiting for her to die or waiting with her as she dies. And the poem can be found at the bottom of this YouTube video, to reference. Out of the bag, you know. The phrase means sometimes to let a secret out, to reveal something. There's something that was hidden has now come to vision. And I'm kind of thinking that if you're kind of slightly struggling with this poem and trying to work out, what all the bit where there's the hallucination of the doctor as he comes, as if he's coming to the window and drawing pictures of people in the steam and all the references to ancient Greece and Lourdes and all that kind of stuff. You might be thinking, well, if this is a poem about revelation, what has been revealed? I'm not, if this is a poem about bringing something to the light, I'm not exactly sure what has been brought to the light, because I'm a bit confused. And in one sense, I think we could say that perhaps that's what the poem is working with. That's something the poem is engaged with. If we just take that title, Out of the Bag, it means to reveal, for sure. But also, we know of this childhood fantasy that had the idea that babies come from bags. And so the bag is a kind of repression, in one sense, of the mother's body. That the bag is what the child, or in remembrance, what the child is sort of substituting the mum's body for. There's that idea here also, however, that because of that sort of substitution, that kind of avoidance of thinking about the mother's body giving birth, the mother's body, in a sense, is also the bag that kind of represses it. when we think out of the bag, one of the things we might be thinking of here is out of the flesh, out of the body as a kind of a bag, horribly. But the poem ends with a scene of death, and if the mother's body is, through the title and through that first sequence, associated with the bag or replaced or repressed by the bag, what does it mean under that title to think about that final sequence of the mother's death? If the mother's body is, in one sense, the bag, then is the end of the poem also out of the bag? Is it about going away from the body in death? And if so, something kind of very strange is happening, isn't it, when you think about it? Because, you know, if you follow that kind of logic, the opening sequence is, or the scene of birth, the bag is the female body. So problematically, but that's one way to think about it. And the children come, new life comes, the human form comes out of the bag. But in death, we are perhaps moving away from the human form. And this particular human form is the mother's body. The mother's body is the bag that produces the human from within. The mother's body is what is left behind in death. There's a real kind of joining together of so many different meanings in that title, a kind of a compression of meanings in that title. The bag as a substitute for the body, as a repression of the body, but also the body returning as bag. The bag as productive of the body. The bag as the body from which we perhaps escape at the end. It's ironic then, I think, to think of out of the bag simply as revelation. Because the title, as it speaks to revelation, is also kind of turned upon itself. What comes out of the bag, what is revealed, isn't one simple thing, but is meaning caught against itself in a complex, complex web. What is revealed is the impossibility of a single revelation.